We all search for that spark which fuels our desire to fully engage in our lives. We look for the courage to experience moments where we can come alive instead of watching life pass us by. You're listening to The Front Row Factor, leaving fear and insecurity behind by exploring stories of top performers that are living life in the front row. Get ready to stand up, step up, and live it up with your host, John Vroman.
Hey, Front Row family, John Vroman here, and I'm so excited that you're with me today because I'm talking to my friend Bari Tessler, who's a financial therapist, mentor coach, and Mama-preneur. She's the author of the new book, The Art of Money. Before I get into her intro and tell you all about our show, I want to give you a couple of fun personal and community updates. This past week was a blast. I had a chance to travel and see some friends. Tuesday, I spoke with some sailors at Navy Weapons Station Earl. Wednesday, I was at St. Thomas Health, a hospital out of Nashville with some incredible residents. And on Thursday, I was at the University of Akron. So if you're listening today and you were with me in any of those groups, then I'm so excited that you're listening to this show, and I had a blast with all of you. I wanted to also mention that our Dad's Retreat is filling up for this fall. It's in October, and the lineup of dads that are coming is just incredible. We've got my buddy Larry Hagner, the host of the Good Dad Project podcast and author of The Dad's Edge, my buddy Hal Elrod, author of The Miracle Morning, my buddy John Ruhlin, author of Giftology. And no, you don't need to be an author to attend this event. We have individuals of all different career fields and passions in life. We have financial advisors and sales directors, and we have all different types of people attending this event. But the one common thread is they are dedicated and committed to becoming epic fathers, leveling up their game. It's not that they're not already outstanding in that area of their life, but they're the type of people that believe there's always something new to learn, and connecting with other dads that have similar shared values will help the entire community to thrive and to be the type of fathers that when we reach the end of our lives, we look back and say, man, we're so proud of how we helped influence and lead our families. I also want to tell you about the Front Row Factor book because many of you have been asking about it. You've been supporting it. You've been offering feedback, and we're so pumped about this book project. It's going to come out right around Thanksgiving time of this year, and we've been doing a lot of interviews, talking to front row recipients and their families about the impact of the events that have been done over the past 10 years. And in case you're listening to this podcast for the first time, in 2005, I helped found the Front Row Foundation, which is an organization that helps children and adults who are braving a critical health challenge to experience the live event of their dreams from the front row. And what's really cool about our organization is that it's not just about one day. It's about that day also becoming a metaphor for how we can live every day of our lives. No matter how many days we have here on planet Earth, the idea is to live all of them to the fullest. And that's what living life in the front row is all about. So this book are the strategies and ideas that we have learned over a decade now of creating these front row experiences, about how to make the most of our time, how to crush our fears, how to create epic moments, and to live that life and live life in the front row. So the book is coming along. I'm so excited to share it with you. Let's get into the show and talk about Bari Tessler. You're going to love this episode. She is the founder of The Art of Money, which is a global year-long money school, which integrates money healing, money practices, and money maps. And we'll talk a little bit about what all that means. Her work and presentations have been featured in U.S. News and World Report, Redbook, Experience Life Magazine, and Emerging Women Live. She is the author of the new book, The Art of Money, which I am holding in my hand right now. The subtitle is A Life-Changing Guide to Financial Happiness, and this is published by Parallax Press. This show today gets into why it's all about money and it's never about money. We'll explain what that means, why looking at the numbers may be the critical missing piece for you, and why Bari took a big stand in writing this book and how it paid off. We get into daily money practices, what's a money date and a body check-in. She shares some of this fun language and what all these strategies are and how they can improve your money situation. So we're going to talk about all that and so much more. Have fun today. Let me know your feelings on the show. Comment on the blog, frontrowfactor.com. And also you can comment and share this episode so that others can appreciate Bari's wisdom as well. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. All right, Front Row family, I am joined today by none other than Bari Tessler, author of The Art of Money. Good morning, Bari. What's up?
Good morning, John. So happy to be here. Thank you. I think you're a morning person, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. Hey, when you're best buddies with Hal Elrod, author of The Miracle Morning, you've got to wake up early or you will be out of the club.
I'm learning. There's a lot of night folks who, we still do a lot. We still have a wonderful life and accomplish a lot. I'm becoming both.
That's what I tell them all the time. Somebody's going to write the evening of meaning and they're going to just take this whole evening world and turn it on its head.
I like it.
So Bari, thanks for joining us. I'm really excited to dig into this topic today. Personally, I'm excited about it. And I'm excited because I know so many people in the Front Row community are excited about what you are an expert in, and that is the money game. And I know that's not your language, but it's my language. And I think about, as I was learning about you for this show, I got so excited because I realized all the limiting beliefs I have around money, the struggles that I've faced, some of the breakthroughs I've occurred, but most importantly, a lot of the questions that still exist for me. I know I'm not alone here, and our community, the Front Row community, is going to be really excited to chat with you. So before we get into the million questions we want to ask, as I do with all my friends, can you give me a brag, a 60-second brag, a highlight reel of what's great in your life right now? Just
Sure.
Pour it on us. We're ready.
So 2 days ago, my very first book, The Art of Money, A Life-Changing Guide to Financial Happiness, was published by Parallax Press, which is my amazing publisher, and their distributor is now Penguin Random House. So that happened 2 days ago, and I'm basking in that.
What a milestone. That's amazing.
Huge milestone. Yes. I've wanted to do this for a long, long time. And it's hardcover, almost 300 pages. I'm really, really proud of the final version.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Now I want to get into where all this started and how you got to this place, but you've had an online program, which hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people have been through from, I think, 20 some countries. And so the book came after that. The book was because your crowd demanded it, and you were like, "Hey, let me provide some information in this form." Tell us about what led up to this moment.
So I started integrating my training in somatic psychology, which I did. That was what I did for 10 years. I trained to be a therapist through and through. I did my own work. I worked in the mental health field. I worked in hospice. I led bereavement groups. And, at some point it became so clear that we had studied every single topic under the sun, everything and beyond the sun, except for money, and every single aspect that it touches on. So it was such an obvious missing piece that I needed to learn it for myself first. And then soon I started looking around and realizing that my entire community, no matter what economic background they came from, religion, spirituality, ethnicity, we all had money issues. We all had strengths around money. We all had challenges. And so it became so clear that I wanted to create a methodology for everyone around me. I just suddenly, all the light bulbs went on, and it was so clear I needed to integrate all of my previous training, all of the deep work that I was doing as a therapist, with all of these bookkeeping systems and the tools and the language of money that I really surprisingly fell in love with, and integrated all into a methodology that I used to call conscious bookkeeping for years, that I now call The Art of Money. And so for 15 years, I've been teaching it in small groups. I used to teach 10-person groups over and over and over and over, and then 20-person over and over. And they were weekend workshops and 6-week classes and 3 months and then 6 months. And I just did that over and over and over. And of course, for me, the way that I work is that I need to teach and then deeply listen and watch what's working, what's not. How is this affecting people? What am I missing? Oh, I'm missing a whole piece on forgiveness from our past. How did I miss that? Okay, I need to add that in. And so as I was teaching the methodology, I was fine-tuning it, honing it, both from my own experience and by teaching this to my community and seeing the response and the reaction and continuing to grow it. And the book was asked for almost day one. As soon as I started speaking and giving my 90-minute overview of this methodology anywhere and everywhere, for the first 7 years, people would always say, well, when's the book? And I would say, soon, it's coming. And a few years ago, I finally said, it is time to write that book proposal. And that was a whole piece in itself and took quite a bit of time while I was opening my year-long program. And then I hadn't even finished the book proposal when Parallax Press calls me up, my amazing publisher, and says, well, hello, Bari, have you been considering writing a book? And I said, well, yes. It was certainly my dream to have a publisher just knock on my door one day.
So great.
Obviously, it's been an arduous journey writing the entire manuscript. I had a very big challenge with the first editor. We got a second editor. That's a whole story in itself. And here we are. It took an entire year to write the 294-page book. And here we are arriving in this moment when it's finally in book form. And so, yes, it's a year-long program that I've been teaching for years. Before that, I taught in every format imaginable. And now we finally have the book, which can reach, so many more people across the globe.
Bari, if people could only read one chapter of your book, do you know which chapter you would say, get this one?
Oh my God. Okay. The first one that's popping into my mind is about money, and it's never about money.
So give us a quick peek into that.
So for me, because it's an integrated approach and it, integrates the practical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, that's the only way I'm going to personally have a relationship to money. This is just one piece. So it's about money. It's never about money. It's something that I've been saying for years and never had a chapter or even like a monthly module in my year-long program. And what I mean by that is that for most of us, we were simply not given a financial education in grade school on up in small increments. Most of us, most people I meet, maybe we had that accounting class. Maybe our parents had us down to open up a checking account or learn how to pay bills, pieces of it. But most of us did not receive an education. So it's about money because there's certainly the language of money. There's tracking systems. There's learning to read reports and be brave enough to look at our numbers and to plan. There's all these practical things that we were not taught. We were not given. Financial literacy is not part of our school systems. It's changing. Exactly. It's not part of our culture. That's changing. So it's about money because we did not receive this education and we need to learn it. Most of us wake up as adults. My community is 25 to 75 years old, and a lot of 30, 40, 50, 60-year-olds taking on their relationship to money for the very first time. So it's about money because we weren't given an education, and it's not about money because we project so much onto money, so many different emotions and beliefs, and we have so many bodily reactions, everything from anger to falling asleep to this is the most boring thing in the world to I want someone just to take care of this for me, and on and or to feelings of sadness of how the system works in our culture and on and on. So where it's not about money and there's all these deeper issues is that it's really about our relationship to power and safety and security and our value and our worth and on and on. And so for the book, I finally broke this down into some of the deeper themes that I see playing out over and over and over and over. And again, I want people to learn the practical side. And for all my financial folks who already know the practical side, there's other ingredients that are missing. And it's usually they have so much strong emotion that they don't understand yet. And so some of the deeper things are some of those main themes that I mentioned: power, safety, security, our value, worth, and that I touch on in that chapter. But my God, there's so many other good ones too. So.
I know it's an impossible question. I'm not known for asking easy questions, Bari. I should have probably told you that before the show. But meaningful questions, deep questions, ones that matter. What theme does show up for people? You said power, safety, security. I think you said worth maybe in there, but is there a more common theme than any other?
Not in my world. I don't see in that way. I don't see in generalizations. When people say what's going on with women and money issues, sometimes I can talk about that, or what's going on with men. I really don't talk in wide sweep generalizations. I see people coming in, and I named this at the beginning of the book. There are 9 areas. And I know this is kind of general, but they're coming in for more clarity around the numbers because they've just half my folks have never looked at their numbers. Right. They're just afraid. They're afraid to see that they're hemorrhaging. They're afraid to see, we know if we keep doing the same thing over and over and over, we're not going to create any change, right? We're not going to understand what's going on and create change. So some of my folks just need some hand holding to actually get them to look at the numbers, understand them. They tell a story, be brave enough to look. Other people, they want more intimacy. They know their relationship to body and food and sexuality and God, and they've done a lot of work there. It doesn't mean they're done, but money just seems to be the last frontier for many of us. And yes, I work with a lot of creative folks. I work with a lot of artists. I work with a lot of therapists, but I also work with a lot of folks who work in the corporate world and on and on and on, or are doctors and what else? So people are just wanting to have some intimacy around their money. I can go on and on. They're wanting more ease of mind. They're really wanting tools and practices around their relationship to money. That's what they're really wanting. And then it's really individual as far as the themes that come up. What surprised me the most doing this work is that I came from a middle-class family. So there was a lot of generosity there. And then there was a lot of conditions that were never spoken in a clear way. So positive and negative. Oh my God, I was given a lot. And yet then there was just a lot of conditions that were not clearly spoken because my parents did not know how to have money conversations. They were not taught, right? So when I first started doing this work, I had some assumption that maybe if you came from a different economic background, things would be easier. I had that. When I was in graduate school studying to be a therapist, we weren't supposed to strive for money, want money, go after a livelihood. We were supposed to just do good work and get paid for it. So when I knew I wanted to teach this work in community and groups. And even with 10 people, we would go around the room and we would talk about family of origin. And as soon as we got to someone who came from a wealthy background, the room would get quiet. And half the room I know was thinking, wow, if I just grew up in that family, I would have no issues in life. All my money issues would be resolved. And one by one, we got to just see that no matter what economic background you come from, you all have shame around money, challenges, strength. So I'm going to generalize for a second, but let's say someone from a wealthy family has their needs taken care of, their physical needs, but they can't tap into what their gifts are, what their superpowers are, what they really want to do with their life. And they don't know how to make their own money. And that is so painful for them. And that's something that's a challenge they need to overcome. Someone who comes from lower class, although a lot of my lower class folks say, no, I came from a poor family. And I was given a lot of love, but there were a lot of physical needs that weren't met. And so there's a lot of things that I need to overcome because I don't know what thriving or abundance means in my body. So how do I accomplish that? But over and over again, I see people, no matter what background they come from, they face this. They go through all the steps, again, practical, emotional, psychological, spiritual. We all can overcome any of this, change our money story and change our financial identity. So it's really individual based on the family they came from, certainly, but also their nature and how they translate what they received, what they didn't. Do they fight it? Do they rebel against it? Are they pissed about it? Are they so grateful for it? And on and on.
For the average 35-year-old walking around today, how many of those do you think really struggle with the money topic? Is it a large percentage? Would you say, John, it's 99%? Or would you say?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
In the Western culture, yes.
Yeah.
And I see it with people who are high earners and they still have shame because they're not saving anything or they don't know how to plan or shape it. Or I have so many under earners who really haven't owned and named their value and their worth and they want to make more. I mean, there's earning, spending, saving, but yes, the average 35-year-old, I'm 47. I don't know how that's possible, but it's true. So the average 35-year-old, the average late 20, 30, 40, 50-year-olds, in my experience, 90% and above is walking around with some level of shame or concern or worry or confusion or thinking that everyone else learned about money but them, they're screwed up about this area, but everyone else somehow got this education. I really start with, I want to know people's strengths around money. I started working with someone recently and she initially named all the challenges, things around back taxes, and on and on. And then I said, please make your list of all your strengths around money. My God, did I get an incredible list. Single mom, raising her boy, the income in her business, running her own business for years and years and years. It went on. Yes, there were things to work on, but most of us just focus on the negative stuff or the challenges. And so I'm always wanting to help people see both, and then we can start improving the other side. But yes.
When I say the word favorite client or breakthrough story or transformation, is there one that jumps to mind right away?
No, because I've worked with thousands. I've worked with thousands and thousands of people.
It's an overwhelming thought. Yeah.
It is an overwhelming thought for me because when I take on private clients, I only work with about 10 at a time. And I only open those slots about one every year and a half. Otherwise, I'm leading my large group. And then I have 5 TAs this year. And so I'm seeing people. For me, it's a lifelong journey. It's something that needs to be taken in baby steps. And so I'm always wanting to know, what are the baby steps that you're taking? Because those all add up to huge, significant change. So when there's one person who's a really high income earner in my community, and she's a powerhouse as a consultant and was making a lot of money, and yet had not stopped to look at her numbers and not stopped to say, I really want to start saving. And for some of us, it's a practice. It's a muscle to practice. It's not something that comes natural to some of us. And so for her to even slow down in her amazing, busy life, mom of 2 kids, high earner, to slow down, start looking at her numbers and say, yes, I want to keep breaking through money ceilings and make more money, but I also need to balance that out with putting away a certain amount each month. And she started doing that. And for her to save for the very first time and then to pay taxes in full, and that's huge. So those little tiny baby steps I can name a million of those. And I know I'm naming a story of a high income earner because I can go to the other spectrum and talk about someone who has a real big challenge with coming up with their fees and with charging. And for someone like that, they also needed to look at their numbers, even though they were so scary, and really understand how they define bottom line basic needs and how they define comfortable lifestyle. So I do a 3-tier money map when I'm helping people in the 3rd phase of my work, trying to understand what phase of life are you in, where are you going? Do you need to make your basic needs, and then to add up those expenses and to see the total, and then to do that with comfortable lifestyle. And then from there, you can start shaping your business and shaping how much you need to charge. And so business models are so important for me, because it's not just about charging what you think you're worth. That's kind of BS to me. For me, there's about 10 different questions that I would ask. Do a body check-in and see what feels right. Who do you want to be serving in the marketplace? Really high earning wealthy folks from wealthy background. Do you want to do that for your private clients and then give away pro bono work to helping low-income women start their own businesses? When I'm thinking of a business model and how do I come up with my fees, there's so many questions. And one of them is, in your personal financial house, what does basic needs look like? And what does comfortable lifestyle look like? And what are the actual expenses and the self-care in there? And what are the numbers? And for me, then there's a discussion and a dance and a dialogue between your personal and your business. And for sometimes some really under earner can look at their numbers and go, oh my God, to achieve basic needs and have a little bit of self-care in there so I could do my good work, this is what I need. And sometimes just that allows them to charge a little bit more or get out there more or let themselves be more visible in the world. For me, it's not always charging more. When I opened up my year-long program, I went from more of a mid-price point to a lower price point. I had an intuition that was the right move. And I went from 60 students to 320 students. And it was a much more accessible price point. And yet it was way more sustainable and way more lucrative for me at the end. And I can serve so many more people. So I'm always looking for what's the right business model. And so that's another, those are tiny little stories. It's really hard for me to think of individual folks, even though we had to, for the book, I share my own stories and then I share so many stories of the community as well.
Has there been a story that you wrote about in the book, whether it be your own or somebody that you work with and serve, that your community of readers so far that's checked out the book, because it's just, I mean, we're talking a couple of days now that it's been available, but I already see some amazing reviews on Amazon. People come back and said, oh, this part of the book really hit me. And has there been a moment like that where you're like, oh, that's so cool to hear? And what moment was it, or what part of the book?
So a lot of people got advanced copies, and I have a book street team, so they've been reading it for the last month. But one of the stories that really jumped out that people keep talking about is from my friend and colleague. His name is Fabeku. One way to describe him, he's a business coach, and he works with a lot of creative folks and artists. And he tells a story. I did a series about 3 years ago called Money Memoirs. And I interviewed 33 people over 33 days, and I asked the same set of questions. It was video and audio and written, and I got this story then. And of course, every story in the book, I wanted to make sure I got everyone's blessing. And that, so I reached out to everyone that's in the book, whether I use a real name or they wanted it changed, to get their blessing. And Fabeku tells a story of being 20. He was either 19 or 20 years old. And his father passed away, I think unexpectedly, and he was given he received an inheritance. And he said it was small, but as a 19-year-old to receive, it was something like $60,000, $70,000. It was a lot. It was a lot of money for him. And he said that he spent that money as quickly as he possibly could. And soon after that, he realized a lot of why he did that. And it was everything from, he was still processing his father's death, and it was so heartbreaking and confusing for him because his father did not realize his artistic dreams and stayed in the same job for years. He was still processing that, and so he just wanted the money gone. It was like he didn't want to have anything to do with it. But he spent it on traveling and being really generous. And so he spent it on wonderful things. And yet he spent it so quickly, and then had to do a whole piece of forgiveness with himself that he did that he spent it so quickly, that he felt it was dishonorable. And he had to go back and honor that he did that at a 19-year-old, that's where he was. That's all he could do. That was the best he could do. And he had to process his father's grief more. And, then he goes on in the book to talk about financial identity. That's one of his terms. And he says you can change your financial identity every day, which I love. I probably update it like every month or every few months.
Mm-hmm.
Where am I now? What are my beliefs now? What's still old? So that's one of the stories that's really popped out. And I think it's in my money healing section, the first 5 chapters. And it may be in the forgiveness chapter, because so many of us, as I mentioned, have things from our past that didn't go well. We didn't read that contract when we were getting married because we trusted, or we didn't know our value, or we didn't even know to look. And now, years later, we're separating, and we really needed to read that contract, or
Sure.
We didn't pay the IRS because we're so terrified to actually just get on the phone and work out a payment plan. Most of us have one thing or a few things from the past that just need some honoring, forgiveness. And so this is one of those stories that a lot of my folks are talking about.
Bari, this is awesome. How does somebody self-diagnose that they need help? How would somebody listening right now say, is it really a challenge? Like, maybe I'm just being a baby about this. Like, maybe I'm better than I think I am, and maybe I don't need any help. Maybe I'm better than most, and that if I would just be wasting time or money or resources trying to do this. And then how does somebody know, hey, maybe they're overestimating their abilities here. Maybe they keep saying, I'll figure it out next month. Or like sometimes I get wrapped up in hey, do I need to figure out how to watch my money more and figure out where it's going? Or should I just focus on making a lot more? And then I don't have to care as much about where, whether or not I spent this or that, or like if I just open the top of the funnel a lot more, then I don't have to worry about the bottom of it as much.
Yeah, so interesting. I have so many responses to what you're saying. So number one, as I was saying, we all have different ingredients that are missing, right? Some of us need to make more, want to make more. On the other hand, we need to watch our patterns, because some people actually believe if they just make more money, all their money issues will go away. And one of my husband's stories in the book was that he had an old pattern that he always feared that he would become, what's the opposite of bag lady? I never know. Bag man? It's like, you guys don't have it, but some guys, have the same fear. And he always had that one day he would wind up like that. So he always thought when he would make a lot more money, that would just go away. And as he started making a lot more money, and as our business started really growing, he had a moment that we talk about in the book where he went to that dark hole, that same place, even though there was a lot more money in the bank account and savings. And so for some people to make more money, just like the woman I was talking about, she kept making more money and breaking through one money ceiling after the next and just said, if I keep making more money, I don't have to pay attention to this. It will take care of itself. And a lot of my high income earners do that, but they get themselves into trouble because there's a foundation piece that's missing. It's, yes, you need to have your systems in place, even if you have a great team. I love financial teams. I love having a bookkeeper, an accountant, and a financial planner, and an estate planner, and I can go on and on. We need to add these people on our financial team as we're ready as we go. But I also think if you completely ignore, if you don't know how to read reports, if you don't know how much is coming in and where it's going, if you don't have a sense of that, I've just seen people get into too much trouble over the years. Bookkeepers, horrible stories. A bookkeeper has stolen money, or you just don't know. It's your life. Your money represents your values. Your money tells a story. It represents what's really important to you and how we spend it and save it and give and invest and on and on. So when people say to me, I'll just keep making more, and then everyone, have a team that will take care of that. That's wonderful. I love having allies and a support team, but I also want us to get in there a bit to learn. For me, learning bookkeeping was revolutionary and taught me so much about my business and how to grow my business and accounting. And so a lot of folks like me, it's very, very helpful to learn that. And I never thought I could learn that language because I wasn't good with math growing up. And somehow I had equated that. So I would say, again, this is an area of life. I call it a garden. It needs our attention. If you overwater any garden, that's not good. But if you underwater, which most of us do, that's not good, right? And so what's the right relationship here? What's the right amount of attention? And so, at the beginning of the book, as I was saying, there's 9 areas that I say most people come to me seeking a next level with clarity, intimacy, knowledge, peace of mind, success, knowing their value, hope, and getting support. So even just like reading the beginning of my book, going to my website and reading a lot of the free content and assessing, like, out of these 9 areas, how am I doing? Which ones am I doing well in? Which ones could I use a little extra support or training or a little more attention? Now, you said, like, am I just being a baby? So for me, there's some women that would say that, but that's more of a guy thing. Like, I need to get tough here and I need to just do it. And I think you can tell from my approach that it's a more feminine, gentle, loving approach, right? I get guys, I have a lot of women, but I certainly get couples, and I get female couples, and I get male and female couples, but a lot of the men come from their women. The women initiate it and the men come. There are so many traditional financial management folks out there, Dave, there's so many. And at the end of my book, I have a great resource section and I list some of the traditional folks, and they're more of a tough approach. This is how you do it. These are the steps. These are the 5 areas of money management: saving, spending, credit, investing, and for me, there's so much more going on. So
yes,
there's just so much more going on. So I would say just you determine how much time and energy you want to give to this. But every year, it's nice to fine tune and update. You call it the money game. I would say our relationship to money, and look at the areas that need some extra attention and work. Do you fight with your spouse about money? Is there still tension there? Would it be nice to learn how to have a money date and over a glass of wine, chocolate, whatever you need, and learn how to bring more love and compassion and fun to this area of money, to your money stories and what you grew up in, to looking at the numbers together, to making sure you're on the same team, to discussing who's on what, who's taking care of the practical. So for me, this money area, my husband is like, you're still doing this work 15 years later. And I keep seeing new threads that touch on our relationship to money. money in the Enneagram, money in couples, money in sex, money in, self-care. I can go on and on. And so for me, this is a never-ending curiosity because our relationship to money touches on so much. So I would say every year and then every few months and maybe even every month evaluating what's working, what's not. Are you, in alignment with your values and spending and lifestyle and family and what's working, what's not, and always evaluating that. And money is just one of the main gardens of life to add into the mix.
All right, so I'm going to give you a choice here between two questions. One is, what would be something, Bari, that you learned in the last year that was surprising to you about money? You're like, wow, I never saw that coming. I never knew that I would learn that lesson. Or another question, and you can answer both if you want, but you can choose here also. Another question would be, what is the part of the money or the relationship to money that you're most curious about now? Like, what are you in process of learning about right now that you are like fascinated by?
Okay. I want to answer both of those.
Yeah, go.
They're both great questions. The first one is more about value. The second one is more about a money piece and future and life insurance. So the first one that I learned over the last year that surprised me but didn't, because I feel like I've been working on this for years, but it really came to a head. And it was really when we handed in the manuscript to my publisher. And I would even back up because I had to negotiate with my publisher for the advance. And as a financial therapist and someone who runs a online program that's global, there's no negotiation. I work for myself because I'm bossy and I like to, I don't like to have someone above me, or I like to run my own thing. So for the most part, I'm negotiating with myself. Mm-hmm. And so it was certainly a good challenge to even negotiate the advance, which I did. I was very proud of. It's a small publisher, but I was able to get double. So we started there. And I had that as a base of my relationship with the head of the publishing firm, who's a woman. I'm so grateful for. And so when I turned in my manuscript 6 months later, and the first editor, we got it back a month later, and it was ripped apart. It was destroyed. My husband had so many metaphors from, it was Frankenstein. They took the head and put in the arm. They took the arm and put it in the crotch. They took the leg off and put it on the head as an ear. It was completely pulled apart. The methodology was changed. The order was changed. It was it sounded like a traditional male writing a money book that's been written hundreds of times, right? So I called my attorney at that point and I said, I think I need to walk away. And for me, I'm bringing this up because it was a value issue and it was certainly a money issue. I was going to have to return the advance if I walked away. What were my options? I was going to have to self-publish. I wouldn't get all the distribution of Penguin Random House. There was potentially a lot of money on the table, a lot of exposure, a lot of credibility. There was so much. But for me, I finally knew the value of my work, the voice of my work, more than I ever had before. And I'd had a failure 9 years before where I was invited. I signed a contract with a publishing firm to do an 11 CD set audio. 9 years before, they flew me out. I got into the studio and I was all prepared. I thought I was 38. I was like so healthy. I remember the cute clothes I was wearing, but I got into the studio and I started talking and teaching. And after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, I stopped and I couldn't do it. And it was the most heartbreaking, painful, a great failure. And I usually don't use that word failure because for me, it just means I was off track. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how to set myself up to thrive. And if I would have known that at the time, I would have known I need a group, I need a community, I need students, I need the dialogue, I need the live interaction. I'm not theoretical. I can't sit and talk by myself. I can for a few hours, but not for days, and I couldn't record that whole thing and we canceled the contract. And I was so devastated that I even thought, I'm never doing this again. I'm not doing my work. And so what was amazing is I got pregnant 6 weeks later and I got very simple again with my work and my business. And I had to really come in before I could really expand again and get really big. And so to have this moment last year, to see my entire manuscript totally change and to say, and then I wound up writing a letter with the help of my husband, the letter of a lifetime. This is not my book. This may be yours. This is not my book. And I knew the voice, I knew the mission, I knew my methodology so through and through at the 15-year mark that I could say, I'm not doing this. Like, this is not my book. And I was completely willing to walk away and thought the only option was that I was going to walk away and self-publish. And I sent this epic letter. And within 10 minutes, the head of my publishing firm called me and said, Bari, I would never publish a book that you don't love and that you don't fully stand behind. And I'm going to get you another editor. I'm going to get you a new editor.
Oh, cool.
And so for me, it was a money thing because there was so much money on the table that I was potentially, and just credibility. And I was willing to, because I was not willing to compromise at this age and this point in my life as a mama of an almost 8-year-old boy, as a wife to my husband of 15 years, to my community. I wasn't going to do it. And so that was an amazing lesson.
That's an awesome story, Bari.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad that you chose to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the short version of what am I working on now is the future. I have a hard time thinking of the future. And I like to be in present moment. And much of my training at Naropa was learning how to be in the present moment, right? That was a lot of my training. And so I've had to work hard to practice. Well, how do I balance being in the present moment with honoring the past and not staying there too much while thinking about the future? And so my book tour starts in a few weeks, and I wanted to make sure that I increased my life insurance to the next level because our business is growing, because I'm traveling for a few weeks without my husband and son. And I want to make sure that, God forbid, if anything happens, that my family has the resources to continue on during that time.
Wow. I remember going through that exact process a couple years ago. My heart totally relates to what you're talking about right now. Bari, this is so great. So much good stuff here that we've covered. And I have a gazillion more questions for you. I'm in my brain. I just thought, wow, I hope I get to do a part 2 with Bari, because this is so much fun. Let's fast forward a year. Speaking of in the future, 1 year from now, you get an email from somebody who read your book and their life was changed in a way that you dream of right now, that you wrote the book for this person. This was what you had envisioned over time. What would that email sound like, or what would they say? What would have to occur for you to just be blown away by getting that email?
It's a lot of things that I mentioned. The subtitle of the book is a life-changing guide, to financial happiness. And so life-changing, we came up with that because so much of my community refers to the work as life-changing. And so if I get an email, when I get an email in a year from one person or many people, it can be anything from they now have money dates. They have loving and compassionate money dates with their spouse or their partner after years of tension and years of fighting and years of getting the credit card bill and running up while their spouse is in the shower and screaming, or bringing it into bed, or, on. And now they have learned how to practice money dates where they meet every few weeks or once a month if they have kids. And they now know how to have loving conversations with each other where they don't blame and shame each other. That's one version. I have another version from a woman who tells me that she now knows her value and her worth through and through, and how that has really transformed the business that she was growing or the corporate work environment that she's in. That, I can go on and on. People have are looking at their numbers for the first time after being terrified, that they realize that they have a mature relationship to money, that it used to be in an adolescent phase where they were still just so rebellious around money, or it was still in the toddler or infant phase, which so many people use this language. So much of my community says they've matured and developed in all other areas, and money's still in the adolescent or infant phase. So for me, it's everything. Oh, I can go on and on, that they now have people in their financial support team that they trust, and that they're learning new parts of the money game, their relationship to money that they never thought they can learn, that someone from a wealthy family has learned how to make their own income, that they're meeting with their financial planners that came from the family, or they got a new financial advisor who is more in alignment with their values, and they're not falling asleep or glossing over during those meetings. They know how to stay in their body and do a body check-in and notice their feelings, right? You see some of these are just some of the life-changing emails that we're going to get next year.
That's awesome. All right, I have 3 more questions about money, and then I want to ask you some final, just fun questions that I usually throw to my guests towards the end here, Bari. So 3 questions about money. One is, what's a small action that somebody listening right now can take today to improve their money situation? What's a step or the first step for them? Outside of, by the way, what I would say is go get this book, The Art of Money.
Great, because there are so many steps and tools and practices in there.
That's right.
Oh God, I'm going to say 2, and I'll make them really short. The first one is really to get a tracking system. And that's number 2 for me, and then I'll say what number 1. Number 2, if you don't have a tracking system in place, please go get one. Mint, Quicken, QuickBooks, YNAB.com. Go get a system. Learn it on your own if you can, like my husband, or get hand-holding if you need hand-holding like me, too, and start tracking your numbers, looking at them, and learning some of your patterns, and put the judgment to the side and just be open and curious to see what you're doing, and then down the road you can change. But I normally don't have people go get a tracking system and look at their numbers first. I have them do a body check-in first. And that for me, this is my favorite tool that seems so simple on the surface, that's pretty profound for most of my folks. So the short, simple version, and I have a whole chapter on it in my book. I almost said this is my favorite chapter. It's an entire chapter on the body check-in, and it's all over my website and blog. It's literally taking 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes to stop and pause. Get curious about what's going on inside your body on a physical level, sensation level, emotion, feeling level, where your breath is, how deep, how shallow. Really just giving yourself a moment to bring awareness to what is your body doing in all of these daily money interactions. So I invite people to do a body check-in when they're going to have a money conversation with their spouse, before, during, and after. When they're going online to look at their numbers, when they're going to the mailbox to get their bills and to sit down and pay them, when they're at the grocery store, when they're telling their client their fees. It's amazing how many daily money interactions there are. And so this is really first step for me, is starting to understand what your money story is and what your body is doing, because our body has so much information and so much wisdom and does quite a routine around money. So I want you to catch it in the moment. If you can't catch it before you're going to have the money conversation, then in the heat of the moment, you may remember, body check-in, or you may remember afterwards and do a little debriefing. It's all great. It's a tool to practice and to invite yourself to do on a daily basis. And yes, it helps with awareness, which leads to understanding our money story, which leads to significant change. So the body check-in for me in daily life is really my favorite tool and first step. And I love all the practical stuff, and I love the bookkeeping systems, and I love the planning and the budgets, which I don't call budgets. I call it a money map and all that. But step 1 is a body check-in.
What's great, Barry, here is that my question number 2 was tell us about a body check-in. So this is perfect. You just covered it. That's awesome. Thank you. So now I'm going to skip right to the third and the last one on money, which is I have a 6-year-old and I'm very interested in supporting him in ways that allow him to develop a healthy relationship to money. So my question for you would be, what are a couple of experiences or activities or actions that a parent could take with their child? And since we have children of similar age, what advice do you give in that space?
Yeah, so it's so interesting because my publisher wants me to write my next book on parenting and money. And I have a 7, almost 8-year-old. And I want to write about couples next. I want a whole book about couples and money. And then we can move into the parenting realm, right? Because I need to experience it more. I need my child to become a preteen and teenager. But here's a few things. Number 1, they're watching everything, right? They're watching how we talk about money, how we spend money, how we give money. They're watching, even at this young age. And so I would say just start to be open to have money conversations with them. And that's number 1, right? Because sometimes families can talk too much about money and sometimes they don't talk at all about money. So just start talking about money. And then what are some age appropriate things to do? For me, with our family, Noah was about 3 years old and had so many desires. And I never wanted to squelch those desires. I had a lot of desires as a kid. I grew up there were 3 of us, and I watched my brother and sister who were younger than me. They always saved, like from a very early age. For me, there were so many fascinating things to me. I wanted to buy my mom the ring at the school fair. I wanted to buy candy. Like there was just always things that were exciting to me. And so here's my son at 3 having a lot of desires. So let's say we were in Target, and back then I had a lot more mommy time than work time. And that was intentional. And so we would go through the aisles and he would just name everything that he wanted, which was everything, and I just let him put everything on his desire list, right? That's what we were doing then. Then at about 4 or 5, I remember going into Nordstrom Rack and we were going to get shoes and he wanted all the shoes. And so I said, well, how about we pick out 1 or we pick out 2 out of these 5? And I started having conversations with him about value and which ones we'll enjoy the most when we leave the store. And I was just starting to introduce choice and how to make good money decisions and how to make good choices when we want everything. And then how do we really enjoy them after we purchase it and get it. So that's what I was doing with him then. Then in the last few years, we started moving into the 3 jar, the saving,
Yep.
spending and giving that, all traditional money management folks talk about. And I just want to mention 2 books. Kimberly Palmer, she's a colleague. She's interviewed me a lot. She's a journalist too. She's on her 3rd book. It just came out last week. It's about parenting and money and kids. And I can't think of the name of it, but please go get that. I just got it. And then there's also Ron Lieber's book about the opposite of spoiled. So those are 2 really solid parenting books. But what we started moving into with Noah is we did start giving him an allowance and asking him to help around the house. So they weren't dependent on each other. There weren't conditions. We wanted him to help in the house and do chores, but we didn't really call it that. It was more just like you contribute to the house and then you also get a weekly allowance. And at first he just was spending it. He was spending the $5 immediately on something at Target, the cheap section at the beginning or the one, he just was spending it. And then after 6 months or so, we realized we wanted to teach him a little bit about saving because that was so hard for both of us growing up to learn that and to practice that. And so he said, well, what if you save for something that you really want or something that's bigger or something that's more meaningful to you, right? And we asked him to see if he could save until his birthday, which was in 8 months. And when we did that, the grandparents chimed in and said they would match it. So whatever he saved, that's quite an investment deal, that his grandparents would match whatever he saved. So he wound up saving until his birthday, and then his grandparents matched it. And he really wanted a Lego set, which are very expensive. If you buy a new one, they're almost, they can be $200 just for, and anyway, he wound up getting 1 Lego set, even though he wanted a lot more. And we did a whole piece about really trying to support him to save and then really think about what he wanted to spend the money on, something that he would really enjoy, appreciate, and then evaluating it afterwards. So those are some of the things that we're talking about. But we really do have money conversations with Noah a lot. And sometimes we have to ask ourselves, is this appropriate to answer? He'll say, well, how much money do you have? And, like, or, and as a 7-year-old, it won't make sense if we say, well, in this bank account, we have this, or how much do you make each month? Or how, he's trying to understand that. And we'll soon move into sharing with him how we do share a little bit, like how much our mortgage costs and how much food, a little bit. We're trying to share what expenses are so he can be a part of that as well and understand that. So that's where we're at. For me, I really need to experience it before I can teach it for some reason in the realm of money and kids and parenting. So that's where we're at.
That's so cool. I think what I take away from this so much is just the power of conversation, the power of living life together, the natural ability to, the curiosity of a child and the questions that'll naturally come up, and then just bringing the topic into conversations like shopping for shoes. I mean, that's fantastic. It's allowing the world to be our classroom. For our son, Tiger, I want to encourage the entrepreneurial spirit of, hey, how do we solve a problem? How do we earn money and then shop for the things that we want? He wants this thing. And we were going to the car wash and he had seen this air freshener thing at the car wash. And he knew that from a previous trip to the car wash. So he said to me, I'm going to go get my money. And he brought his money. And he walked in and he went right to the air fresheners. He said, how much for that air freshener to the guy who was working there? He said, $1. And my son opened up the case he was carrying his money in. And the guy working at the car wash was so blown away. He's like, this is awesome. And he handed him $1 and the guy handed him the air freshener. And Tiger was so proud of that moment. And the way he's earning money, by the way, I should tell you, you'll appreciate this, Barry, is that we told him that he could open up a store in his room that we would then shop at his store. And so he said, well, what can I sell at the store? And I said, well, you can sell all types of things. He said, but one of the things I would focus on, I'd be interested in buying. And that's what you do when you're an entrepreneur, is you find out what people want, you help make their life better, and you use a talent of yours to do that. I said, so let's explore your talents and let's explore the things I like. And so he's a talented artist. He loves to draw. He loves to create, loves to make things. And I love to look at his art and I love to encourage that. So I said, why don't you do art and then you can sell it in the evenings at your store? So every night when we go to bed, he opens up his store and we can buy things, and then he gives us change. And the change is things that he finds around the house, and he just likes giving you change, which is like a pen and an eraser, and it's awesome. But the whole experience is fun. And so he's doing more art. We're getting a chance to encourage him. He's taking the money, and I'm sure that in some way I'm messing him up through this process, but that fear of parenting where you're like, oh, this all sounds great, but one day I'll look back and go, wow, I really taught some terrible principles here. But
yeah, we're trying to figure out the same exact thing, and my husband's trying to teach him some of the same entrepreneurial concepts, so we haven't quite figured it out yet. And I love your idea, but I'm also trying to think it through all the way to how that's going to translate to him as an adult. But we won't know. But we won't know because that's partially his personality and his nature and all, on and on. And I love what you're doing because my son is such an athlete, but then every once in a while he sits down and draws, and oh my God, I love seeing his creations.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share that with my husband. I love it.
And it creates a lot of conversation with my wife, Tatiana, and I too, because we do the same thing you do. We play it out. So we're like, oh my gosh, and now he's going to learn that he should only create art if he gets paid for it. Is that like the bad part of this? But we think, listen, if you play anything out, you can say why that's probably not a good idea if you play it far enough out. But I think the intention and the principles of what we're doing here are encouraging. And I think we're teaching him the value of his time and his energy and how to negotiate. We're even negotiating with him in the store because he'll draw like a stick figure and he's like, hey, this is $7. And we're like, hey, that's...
Love how he's putting the value on it. He's saying this is, it's $7.
That's right. He's learning to price things too. So it's interesting.
This is a whole other conversation. It's also how do we teach our kids grit, because
that's right.
A lot of our children, my son is certainly growing up with a lot more than I did because he's the only child and it's just different. We're older parents. And part of the grit I learned was my father sending me out and saying, you need to apply for this many jobs over the weekend and report back to me. And, I had to work from the age of 15 on, and there was a lot of grit in that pissed me off at the time, but I think really has served me. And yet,
For sure.
also my father was an entrepreneur, and that's what I really learned from him was the entrepreneurial spirit. So it is how to pass that down, both just by living it and the conversations, and also, these little things that having a store in the bedroom. I love that. I think we should write about that more. I do.
Yeah. Well, you and I will keep that conversation alive, and we'll share back with our communities what happens there. That'll be fun. Bari, I know that you have a very busy day, so I want to be respectful of your time here. Do we have a moment for a couple final questions?
We do.
So, gut reaction, these are easy. These could be one-liners. What's a book or documentary that you feel in your heart should be mandatory for all humans to experience?
The book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great book.
Yeah. I read that over and over and over throughout my life, and started, I don't know if I was a teenager, but I was certainly an early 20-something year old.
In the end, when this ride is over for us, what do you want to be most remembered for?
I want to be most remembered for my family, being a mom at the age of 40, being a wife, and for being brave enough to do my own inner work and take on a topic in our culture that is such a shadow, hidden, taboo topic that really needs to be taken on. And then I'm taking it on in a very creative, loving, deeply meaningful, feminine way that really is life changing for folks that walk the path.
And a fun one to wrap us up. What live event, concert, sporting event, theater performance, anything would you most want to see front row? What's the dream event for you?
I thought you were saying what was your favorite event?
No.
And
although you could tell me that if you want, but no,
what popped into my mind was Madonna's tour. As a teenager with those boobs, with the pointy boobs and all the costumes and the theater and the dance.
Oh, I never noticed.
Oh my
never
God.
Noticed.
No, it was just the costume. It was amazing. It was so that was as a
if you could go back in time
as a teenager, that was just the dance and because I was all of that was incredible for me. I don't know about this one. Nothing's coming to me. I mean, I'm having Oprah pass across my screen.
There you go. That's a great one.
The Dalai Lama pass across my screen. Yeah.
Cool. We'll go with Oprah. That was your gut, right? That's awesome. Bari, any final thoughts for the Front Row community? Anything we didn't get to today that you'd want to share with everybody?
I'm just really appreciating getting to hang out with you, John. I feel like we could keep continuing this conversation, and I'm just feeling grateful for meeting you and grateful to get to connect with your community. It's a very exciting, powerful time in my life. So I'm just happy to be here.
Well, we're so grateful to be celebrating this moment of your life with you. And we are big fans already. I'm a big fan. I know the people I've shared your story with in the Front Row community are very excited about listening to this interview. I'm super grateful to our friend David Brower for connecting us. David's such a nice guy. And for those listening in the community, you probably have heard his show. I interviewed him a while ago. And David, he's the sensorial experience guy. And we did dinner with David at his home in Paris, and it was the most epic dinner ever. And so much good has come from that dinner, which I will put you now into this realm of goodness that all was a spark of that evening. Bari, I'm so honored to be in your front row, connected to your world, witnessing the gifts that you're bringing to humanity. I want to thank you genuinely from the bottom of my heart for doing the inner work and being brave and bringing out of the shadows things that people will benefit from. And then through those benefits will ripple into the rest of the world in a loving and meaningful way. You are a true gift. I'm going to celebrate you today. I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to sit in silence and just appreciate your wisdom that you gave to the Front Row community today. So thank you for that. And as I say to all my friends, you are shaping a world that my children are growing up in. And for that, I am deeply, deeply appreciative. Bari, from this point forward, people are going to go to Amazon. They're going to pick up your book. Where else would you send them to get more Bari?
Oh, come to my site at baritessler.com. It was recently built. It's beautiful for my husband. It was final gift. We've been working together for almost 3 years, and he created this gorgeous new site for me and is stepping back into his own business. So come on over to baritessler.com, BARITESSLER, and there's so much more going on over there.
It is a beautiful site. Congrats to him and you, because it is awesome. I was blown away. It was actually really what I went through my head was, wow, this is very well done. So everybody check it out. We'll link to that in the show notes. And once again, Bari, thanks for your time. We'll catch you later.
Thank you.
All right, that's it for our show today. Thanks for listening. Make sure to check out BariTessler.com. We'll link to that in the show notes. Bari's encore episode is out in just a couple of days. Remember, that's questions from our community that I ask to our guest. And then if you'd like to participate in this, just go to frontrowfriends.com. That'll link you to our private Facebook group where you can post your questions for future guests there. Also, make sure to share this episode with a friend today. Every time I listen to a podcast or read a book, I ask who else would benefit, and then I try to share it with at least one person. I mentioned at the beginning of this episode today, as in the intro, that we have our Dad's Retreat, Front Row Fathers, coming up in October. It is a invite-only exclusive group. It's an outstanding group of men already attending. We have a few spots left. If you'd like to get more information, go to frontrowfactor.com/contact. Send me a message, and we'll communicate. We'll set up a little interview, and we'll decide if it's the right fit for you. Catch me on social, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Jon Vroman. That's Jon, V like Virginia, Roman. And finally, the Front Row Factor book is coming out this fall. And if you are excited about learning more about the book project, or you want to connect and be part of that launch team, if you'd like to get a little peek behind the scenes to this book launch process, again, go to frontrowfactor.com/contact, shoot me a message, and we will make sure to put you on the team. And we'll talk to you all about what that means. That's it for today, everybody. Thanks so much for your love and support of the Front Row Factor podcast. If I can do anything to serve you or help you to live life in the front row, don't hesitate to ask. Hit me up on social media, share with me your dreams and goals, and let me know how we can collaborate and build an awesome life together. Take care. We'll catch you on the next show. See ya.
That's all for this episode of the Front Row Factor. To discover more simple and effective ways to lead a fearless front row life, visit frontrowfactor.com and subscribe to Jon's 4 Minutes in the Front Row, where he shares quick stories from real-life experiences. Thanks again for joining us today. We hope our show inspires you to live big, give big, and experience life to the fullest. See you next week on the Front Row Factor.